I'm a genie in a bottle. Open me up, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dram Talk. I'm Brad.
And I'm Daniel.
Today, we're looking at Oban 14 and Tomatin, Cu Bocan. So, just to start things off, and for those of you that don't know, Oban's one of the many Diageo-owned distilleries on Scotland.
Yeah, so Diageo is one of those big multinational beverage alcohol companies. They pretty much run a large portion of the distilleries that you may be familiar with.
Yeah, so more often than not, maybe your favourite scotch is owned by Diageo.
Yeah, they run about 28 malt distilleries. 17 of them are from Speyside. They run 2 in Islay, which I believe are Lagavulin and Kalila.
Yes, that's correct.
As well as some of the Highland whiskies as well. I mean, like even just looking at the back of the Oban tin, they've got Glenkinchie in the Lowlands, Dalwhinnie in the Highlands, Cragganmore in Speyside, Talisker from Isle of Skye, and yeah, as I mentioned, Lagavulin from Islay.
Right, and just to give you a little reference point, Oban's found on the west coast of Scotland, and it can often be said that Oban's a gateway to the Isles.
Yeah, I remember from like my first time trying Oban, one of the things that kind of resonated with me and made me enjoy this whiskey was the notes of sea salt that it kind of carried with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's very characteristic of a lot of the not Isle whiskies.
Yeah.
Like Talisker, Laphroaig and Tobermory, even Jura as well. Like,
Yeah.
There's some of the...
No, yeah, definitely. And now the salt may not be as prominent as you'd probably find in Talisker, but it's definitely there.
Oh yeah, Talisker is like next level for their kind of harsh saltiness.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I like it was kind of like a hint, so it did resonate with me there, but also had like a lot more of a sweeter, smoother undertone to it. So I think like, as you mentioned, yeah, great way to the Isles, but I think it's perfectly located to branch in either direction. Like if it's your first time trying Scotch and you're wondering what it is you like, Oban might be a really good place for you to start if you're willing to get an understanding or get an idea into the broad array of different Scotch flavors. Like if you enjoy the kind of saltiness and the sea spray kind of notes to it, then maybe head out to the Isles. If you'd rather the smoother, sweeter, silky tones, then head inland.
Yeah, just make your way inland. And I think that's what makes Oban such a great middle ground.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just a little bit about the distillery itself. It was established in 1794, and not only that, it was there before the town.
So they built the town around the distillery?
I'm guessing so, and that's probably something I'd do as well, considering how good this drop is.
Yeah, I think that says a lot about the person that founded Oban.
Yeah, definitely does. And the distillery itself, they only have 2 pot stills. That makes them one of the smallest distilleries in Scotland. And the actual process of making this fine liquid here hasn't changed since 1794. And at the moment, they only have 7 employees. And aptly...
Jeez, I've got more people in my family.
aptly, that's 14 pairs of hands to make Oban 14.
Oh, so poetic.
Yes, just poetic. And now, most typical notes you'd probably find in an Oban, and that's just me going off like my references. It's like a really light, dry smoke, similar to the islands, like we mentioned before. But Oban also presents a lot of the lighter, sweeter notes you'd find in the Highlands.
Right, yeah.
And in terms of their actual range itself, it's quite small. So they have the 14, the 18, the Little Bay, and the Distiller's Edition. Now, over here in Oz, I've definitely seen the 14, 18, and the Little Bay in store. Yep. I've never stumbled across the Distiller's Edition, because if I had, I would have bought it.
Yeah, I haven't seen one of them either. I've heard whisperings on the fringes of society, but I have a feeling it's another one of those Scottish myths, because the Distiller's Edition has not made it to Australian shores.
And who knows, maybe it has, and we just suck at finding it.
Yeah. Well, there are other Oban fiends like yourself that are hunting it down as soon as they reach our shores.
Yeah, and in saying that, an Oban fiend, I think we should just get to the nose and palate here.
Absolutely.
Because I can't wait.
Let's go.
Now, on their site themselves, the notes that they say should be present in the scent should be fresh oranges, lemons, pears, with a hint of salt and peat. Now, for me on the scent, I definitely get the citrus notes. I can kind of see the saltiness there, but it's definitely not strong. So I think you could easily miss that saltiness if you're not familiar with it.
Yeah, so what we usually like to do is for every year that it's been in the cask, we let it age for 1 minute in the glass. So in this case, we've let it sit in the glass for about 14 minutes. I know when I first started pouring it, I was definitely getting strong notes of salt. They've really subdued now over time, but I think like it'd be interesting, like a fun little experiment for anyone that does have a bottle. As we pour it, do the same thing yourself, like smell it immediately as soon as you're pouring it, but then let it sit for a bit and then come back to it. And I think you'd be amazed at how much it develops and opens up as well as time goes by.
Right, definitely. And like we've mentioned in previous episodes, letting Scotch open up and then comparing those different notes that you're getting, it's all part of that experience, and it's all part of developing that bank of associations that you can always draw back to and think, okay, these notes remind me of this, these notes remind me of that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it is helpful to refer to the websites or the bottle to get an idea of what it is you should be expecting. But if the words you're coming up with and the forms of association you're drawing aren't written on the bottle, it doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. It just means that that is your personal experience. Like, no one can tell you what you're smelling and what you're tasting. Like, as we've mentioned previously, I do not get chocolate notes in whiskey whatsoever. Even though countless ones we've tried have mentioned chocolate, it is just not something that comes up for me.
Yeah, I think I was getting some in Glen Grant.
Right.
But again, I think that's just more of my palate needing to develop as well for me before I can actually draw a prominent chocolate note. Right, so before we get into the palate here itself, so they're saying we should expect a dried fig spice and a smoked malt dryness on the palate.
Interesting.
So like as it sits a bit longer, the orange note becomes a lot more present.
Yeah, I'm getting a mix of both that citrusiness that you usually find in orange, as well as that the kind of crisp fruit notes to it, like the same thing you'd find in an apple or a pear. Yeah.
So like funny you say that in terms of picking up the notes on apple. In terms of my own bottle of Oban, maybe it's due to me letting it oxidize a little more, but I definitely pick up green apple notes.
Oh, interesting. Like, I'm not getting green apple specifically, but as you said, it could just be that you've had your bottle for a year longer than I have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely getting that dry, crisp fruit. So let's get to the palate.
So definitely, I think initially on the palate, you definitely get that spice. The spice comes straight at the front, but as it dissipates, but it's a long finish, it's smooth, and it just leaves at a very good pace.
Yeah, it's definitely experience. Like, if I could describe what I go through when I drink Oban, it's like you've got like a salty coating to it, but as that salt hits the edges of your mouth and kind of
it turns into a sweetness, right?
Yeah, like that sweet fruitiness comes across as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes Oban so drinkable for me and why I love it so much. It presents such complexity, and I think a lot of people might confuse that complexity with, I guess, calling this drop a boring dram, which I've often heard it called that because people say it's so safe.
Right. I mean, like, I could understand that if you were wanting to go to different kinds of extremes. Like, if you were loving peated Islay whiskies and you read notes of peat in Oban and you tried it, you would not find it was very peated. Same thing as if you were on the other side and you only liked the sweet, smooth whiskies and you tried Oban, you may be a little bit shocked at the salty tang that it might have. So I think, like, in that sense, people could say that it doesn't sit on one extreme or the other, and they could say it's not making a stand as to what it is. But I think
that's the beauty of Oban.
Exactly. For me, that's what I'm loving most about it, is how it's kind of ticking the notes of what I associate with the Islay whiskies, but it's also striking like that kind of sweet fruitiness you'd get in the Highlands.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely often use Oban as an introductory dram for people that I'm trying to get into Scotch, or people that I want to show what Scotch can offer.
I think that's interesting because in my mind, like, if I was trying to get someone into Scotch and got them to try Oban for the first time and ask them what they were experiencing, if they started to identify and they liked the sweetiness but didn't like the sting, then I would direct them inland. Whereas if they were like, oh, I like that. I mean, I keep saying saltiness. I know that's something I use because it's a form of association that I have with a lot of other ones. But if they were kind of describing those salt, smoke, peatness.
Yeah, like that coarseness that you'd find in Islay.
That's kind of sitting at the back of Oban. If they were identifying that or liking that, then yeah, you direct them the other way. So I think it is a really, really good entry point for people.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that it is bottled at 43% for us here in Australia, I think that's a good level for people that are first getting into drinking Scotch, because 40% might be a bit too watered down, I think.
Yeah, probably. Like I think with 40%, the alcohol isn't strong enough to bring out a lot of the robust flavors that whiskey's capable of having.
Yeah. And I know they do mention that the finish is long, and I still have it present on my palate, and it's so good. I think that's all I can say. It's so good, because initially on that finish, like you mentioned before, that you get that saltiness, but now when it's completely gone, for the most part, you're left with like a sweetness in your mouth, and it's just great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to think of a way to describe that kind of experience in like terms of food, for example, but like a good one is if you've ever had salt with orange, like you kind of get that saltiness, but as well as it's kind of like a mix of sweetness. Really, it's working really well together.
Right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to add about a teaspoon of water to the Oban. Now, even though it is at 43% and the alcohol content isn't so high, we're still going to add the water to see how it changes. So after the water's added, there's no Scotch mist, and I don't think we mentioned it before, but I'm fairly certain Oban is chill filtered and there is colouring added. And unfortunately, that is often present in Diageo releases, and I think that's just there to maintain the consistency between the characteristics of the certain distilleries.
Right, yeah. Just a note on that, looking at the bottle, it does not mention that it is non-chill filtered, nor does it say it's natural colour. The chill filtration is a little bit of a giveaway because it's usually always mentioned if it's non-chill filtered. Natural colour, it's hit and miss. Some say they don't, some say they do, and if they say it's natural colour, then you know it is. But even ones that don't specify it doesn't mean that artificial colouring has been added. I know we've talked a lot about integrity bottling, and that is something to look out for, especially when you're deciding what to spend your money on. But don't let this turn you off Oban, because, but just to specify for Australia, like Oban in the shops is about like $110.
Yeah.
And to see a 14-year-old whiskey at $110, I don't think that's unreasonable. And I think even considering, as we mentioned earlier, that Oban's a relatively small distillery with a small range, I would almost say it's surprising that they've released one so cheap. And I think what they're asking for is quite reasonable.
Yeah, and considering this really would be their entry dram into their range, right?
Yeah, so I'd say like this would be what their best, like their biggest and best seller as well.
Yeah, and not only that, but it's the most affordable one, because Little Bay around here in Australia, that's about 120, 130, so it's maybe $15, $20 more than the Oban at 14 itself.
Yeah, and that's not aged, no statement on that.
Yeah, and although it does hurt my heart and even breaks it a little that this isn't an integrity bottling, I still love it all the same. I still love it all the same. Don't let Daniel change your mind. So after the addition of water,
I'm getting the citrusy notes have subsided a lot, and I'm getting a lot more of that sweeter tones coming up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that sweetness is more of a sweetness you'd find in a baking spice. For me, I'd find.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, I hadn't even begun to characterize it, but it's definitely.
Yeah, and I think I'm able to characterize it because I'm so familiar with Oban, and I do drink Oban quite often.
This message brought to you by Oban.
Exactly.
No, we are not sponsored by Oban.
Yet.
And they have not provided us with any free bottles.
Yet. But soon.
Hopefully. if I don't kill it. So I would say like even the saltiness is subdued from the taste as well, from the palate. If you are not a huge fan of that harsh, salty bite that Oban could carry, or a lot of the Ireland whiskies do carry, yeah, definitely adding like 5 ml of water drastically changes it, which is really good for accommodating a wide range of palates.
Yeah, definitely. And that addition of water, it really brings forth that spice note as opposed to the salty note.
Right, yeah.
So right now it's more of a spice. And it's more of a spice that I'd say we found in our Glen Grant review, where that was more of a baking spice. And it's very similar to that note.
Yeah, I'm getting like, baked, spiced fruits, like what you'd get if you were making, a pie or a strudel.
Yeah, exactly. And with that Glen Grant, which was infinitely sweeter than Oban, I find, this is just a little more subdued than that.
Yeah, so for me, this is hitting a lot better than the Glen Grant did, but that's purely based off my preference for, I guess, salty over sweet.
Yeah. So we're just going to finish up our drams here, and then we're going to go into a very controversial topic that we have here at Dram Talk. And something that I've seen on Reddit, So that's on the Scotch Reddit. And it really was intriguing to me. And I brought it forth to Daniel here. And it's just, do you only need 5 bottles of whiskey? Spoiler alert, Dram Talk aren't so sure.
And after we discuss each of our 5 bottles that we'll have to live with, we'll come back and we'll review the Cu Bocan. Following that, we'll give our ratings on both of these very interesting drams.
All right, so back to the controversial topic of the day.
Okay, so if you're forcing me to live with 5 whiskies, what are the criteria for each of these? Like, why only 5?
All right, so the 5 bottles, you're going to have your daily drinker, then you're going to have your showy one, then you're going to have the cheap one / the blender, then you're going to have the great one, then you're going to have the special one.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so describe to me, what is the daily drinker?
So the daily drinker, that'd just be your go-to when you want to enjoy Scotch, when you want to kick back, and it doesn't necessarily have to be affordable, right?
Okay.
It doesn't have to be cheap.
Right.
Because there is a cheap one after all, so we don't.
I think I've chosen a reasonably more affordable one, but that's basically just because it is one that I thoroughly enjoy.
Okay, and what's that?
So, and I know this is really not for everyone, but I would say my daily drinker would probably be the Talisker 10.
Oh,
Now,
okay, wow.
I chose that one for very specific reasons. Primarily, it is not as heavily peated as a lot of Islay whiskies are, so it doesn't leave that smoky taste that fills your mouth and is all you've got. So if I'm drinking it on a daily basis and don't want to have that kind of smoky mouth feel, it is a good one when you're looking at that kind of island, strong, harsh island whiskey that's usually characterized by saltiness. And as I mentioned before, like I'm much more a salty person over a sweet.
Okay.
So Talisker is one that I've just always thoroughly enjoyed. Whether that's like a nostalgic thing because it was one of the first distilleries I actually visited and one of the first whiskeys I actually tried. Hard to say, but I just like the 10 is just a thoroughly good dram that I would enjoy any day of the week.
Okay, nice. A really strong pick, I think. For most people anyway, but...
Oh yeah, it's not one that I would recommend for a lot of people's daily drinker. You really either have to love it or at least able to handle those harsh whiskies. Maybe I just hate myself and just want to punish myself constantly.
Yeah, and I think, like, looking at myself now, if I'm talking for my daily drinker, and I've gone with a really strong one as well.
Yeah, interesting.
So, and I've gone with Laphroaig 10.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so... Over in Australia as well, this one's actually pretty affordable as well. You commonly find it at $80.
Yep.
When it's either reduced or even now, I think commonly I'm finding it at $80 around the place. But for me, because I can just remember buying my first bottle of Laphroaig 10, and within that week, I just looked and I thought, where the hell did that go?
Honestly, I could say the same thing because very shortly after buying mine, it seemed to just... Someone seemed to be stealing it. Like, it was just evaporating out of the bottle faster than any of my other ones.
Yeah, and he was like, I don't know if it's because maybe, like, that first time I drank it, it might have been my first experience with a whiskey like Laphroaig. So I was just kind of consistently going back to it, trying to chase that first time I had experienced it on the palate.
Interesting.
And of course, like, every time you drink something, your palate gets more and more accustomed to it. So what you're picking up is different every time.
Ah, nice. Yeah, and in case anyone just picked up on what I said about the fact that my Laphroaig was disappearing faster than any other bottle on my shelf. And they're like, but didn't you say Talisker 10? I was like, well, Talisker 10 is not on my shelf because that was finished long ago. And I just have been too poor to go out and buy another one.
Yeah. And even that as well, I think for us as well, we do have daily drinkers. We have ones that we often revisit. But at the moment, on our whiskey journey, we're trying to restrain ourselves from buying bottles again, doubling up on anything. Because we just want to experience as much as there is out there.
Yeah, so we're doing this all for you, listeners. So I hope you're feeling grateful for our sacrifice at trying new ones and not going back to some of our favorites.
Yeah, exactly. We're stopping ourselves from drinking what we want to drink, so you don't have to.
You're welcome. Okay, what's the next bottle? What's bottle number 2?
Right, so bottle number 2, that's the showy one. So it's fancy, but not overly so. But I think you'd mainly use the showy one to either impress or introduce your friends to Scotch. I think that's more what I'd use it for. So it's more like a showman, right? You know, it's the guy that's opening the act.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
So what's yours?
Now, I think I almost break down this whole you can only have 5 bottles thing because I have got 2 answers for this.
Okay.
I would say Lagavulin 16 would be a good
You
one.
mustn't like your friends.
Only because, like, I think as harsh as a lot of peaty ones can be and as shocking as that smoky hit can come to people, when I first tried a peated whiskey, I didn't even know I was trying a peated whiskey.
Right. No, then that's the same for me.
I ordered Lagavulin, no idea what I was expecting. And when it came, it was a shock, but a good one, a pleasant one, a nice one. So it hit me in like a nice, comforting sense. It was very welcoming. However, I know that a lot of people aren't like that. And there are people out there that would like hate smoky peated whiskies. So I know that I could not introduce everyone to Scotch based on like a 16. So the other one I had would be my Glen Scotia 15.
Yeah, that's great.
I think
love
that is a superb dram.
Yeah.
And it is one that I think no matter what your taste palette is, paired to whatever region, it's going to please.
Yeah, no, definitely. Glen Scotia is great. And like even like where we were saying that it really is a myth that you can't introduce people with peated smoky whiskies. You can. Because some people, their palates are able to handle that. And some people are just more adventurous than others. And they're willing to give that a go.
Yeah, to provide a short anecdote, my sister, she was 21, she was overseas, and she had never tried whiskey before. She was not very much an alcohol person, but she was over in Scotland, and she fell in love with Islay whiskies. And that was kind of a shock to me, but also kind of a proud moment.
Yeah. Right. So for me, my showy one would be the one that we reviewed today, Oban 14.
What do you know?
So look, it's not necessarily a fancy dram. I wouldn't say it's fancy because it's just like it does. It's not that it doesn't present well. It does present well. The canister it comes in is great. The artwork on it's great.
Yeah, it's got a very piracy looking flowy script. It does look like a really good dram, and I think they've done the marketing on that really well.
Yeah, and for me, this was like really tough, right? Because Oban could have very easily been my daily drinker. Right. But look, so
you don't love it that much.
No, I think I love it too much that I couldn't just pick Oban 14 for every single category because then I'd have 5 bottles of Oban 14. So
you would blend Oban 14.
I mean, Oban with Coke.
You heard that, guys. First here, Brad would blend Oban 14.
Oban and Coke. Who hasn't tried that before? But yeah, like it kind of just goes back to everything we mentioned before on the nose and the palate. That Oban just presents itself as such a great introduction to whiskey and Scotch in general because it's such a great middle ground because you can either go left or right.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a very good point on your part. I'm reluctant to admit, but it is a great one to introduce people into.
You hear that, people? I'm always right. Right, so the next category, that's the cheap one or, aptly called the blender. Right, so it's for those that may not necessarily appreciate God's nectar, the golden liquid here. And it's probably often one you use to mix with. Now, for me, this is Dimple 12. Right? Okay. So in Australia, Dimple 12 is very, very affordable. You'd often find it at $40 for a bottle. Mm-hmm. Then I think, and that's for the 700ml. So the standard bottling size, 70 cl, centiliters. Now, you can often find that in Australia, maybe. You can often find a 1 litre bottle of Dimple, and I think that's about $60. So you can get a litre of the stuff pretty cheaply. But for me, I think what I like about Dimple itself is that it's a very smooth blend, and it's very easy to drink. And I actually didn't mind drinking it neat as well. So I didn't necessarily use it to blend because I don't really drink blended stuff.
Right, yep.
I don't generally blend or mix a drink. I'll just drink it neat regardless. Even if it's a blended Scotch, I'll still drink it neat because I still like to palate it and see what notes I'm picking up. And for those of you that don't know, Dimple actually features malts from Glenkinchie and Linkwood in the mix itself. So, yeah, I don't know. If you've never tried Dimple before, it's very affordable. So go get yourself a bottle.
Yeah, great. I would say for my one, now I have 2 answers. I have one which is my blended whiskey, and one which is one that I would provide to the uninitiated if they wanted to experience Scotch. So the one that I would do that if I was to provide a single malt to people, it'd probably be the Glenfiddich 12 I think that is such an iconic whiskey. Everyone knows the bottle, the triangular bottle. It looks nice. It is a good one that people can feel like they're getting the full whiskey scotch experience if you provide to them. They feel like you're pulling out the big guns, but you also wouldn't die inside if they decided to mix it with something. But on note of the blender, like say if it was a blended one, I would say my one would probably be Johnny Walker Double Black.
Okay, yeah.
Like that is one that when I first started drinking whiskey and not drinking it neat, when we're out at night and we wanted an affordable way to drink, I would usually go the Double Black, occasionally mixed with like soda, but sometimes just a double black. double black.
double black.
Double black. Try saying that 10 times fast. But I know that one has a lot of peated whiskies blended in with it. So that's probably why I would choose that one. So again, that's my preference. But I think that the Double Black of the Johnny Walker range is the most affordable and probably the best one.
Yeah, and that's probably just going back to why you love Kalila so much. It's because Kalila is the predominant blend in Johnny Walker itself. So, so if we're going to the next category, that's the great one. So this is your once or twice a week dram or your Friday night weekend opener. Now, for me, my great one at the moment, it's definitely the Ardbeg Black.
Okay, yep.
I've really enjoyed what they've done with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like an excellent experiment that they've done.
Absolutely.
And it has me very, very interested to see anything that's gone through that same casking process.
Like sorry, explain the casking process.
Yeah, so the casking process for that was just the Pinot Noir casks. And just with that Ardbeg, it's just so good.
It works really well.
It works really, really well. I think you probably wouldn't expect it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you wouldn't expect it because I know we definitely didn't.
No, yeah. When we tried it, for those of you that don't know, why would you know? We were the ones that tried it.
Yeah.
We went to one of the whiskey stores nearby and they had like a whole range they're one of the Ardbeg ambassadors. So they have a lot of Ardbeg stock in. So that kind of interested us. Yeah. And so we were having a look at their range and we didn't know what to pick. So we decided to try a couple. And when they gave us the black, like that just came out of nowhere. Was not expecting the experience that gave us.
Yeah, no, definitely. And for those of you that don't know, that's World of Whiskey
in Double Bay.
In Double Bay. Yeah. So definitely go visit them because they have such a great range, great collection, and you'll probably find something that you're not able to find anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And the staff's pretty good. Like he kind of left us alone to check out whiskey at our own pace. And then when we wanted help and when we wanted to try some, he was right there and willing to accommodate.
Yeah.
Again, World of Whiskey, do not sponsor this.
Yeah. Yet. Yeah, no. But I think it goes to show that we're really able to recommend them and say that is such a great place to shop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it was such a great experience there. So yeah, just going back to my bottle that I've chose, the Ardbeg Black, it's just so good. And I think even people that aren't familiar with Scotch could enjoy this because they can appreciate the notes that are present, because the wine notes, those Pinot Noir notes, they're so present in the drop itself. It's just amazing.
It's undeniable.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the smoke marries so well with it that you just, like, I don't have any other words to say. It's just great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Daniel, what do you got here?
So for my one, I also went an Ardbeg. I went the Ardbeg Ugadal. For me, this came down to how much it surprised me. I got that one as a gift and I requested it because it was a recommendation I heard through, I don't even know, it was just like multiple channels that came from somewhere and it just stuck in my mind. I was like, oh, I would like to try that. So when it arrived, it was just surprisingly good. It's got like the heavily peated notes of a lot of Islay whiskies that comes across in like that campfire sense, but it's in like a really soft and nice way. And it's also combined with like a treacly bacon well, that just, they complement each other so well.
Yeah.
And it just makes for a whiskey you can sit there and you can not be doing anything else, just holding that and just savoring that dram, and my night can just be complete. Yeah.
And just spoiler alert for future episodes. The next episode, we will be reviewing these two bottles, right?
Yes. So sneaky little promo in here for our next episode. Sneaky little
promo for the next episode. So stay tuned for that one. Yep. It's going to be a great episode.
Oh, I am looking forward to it. Also kind of dreading it because that'll mean my bottle of Ugadal will be going.
Yeah, we'll have to say the last rites.
Oh my God.
It's going to be horrible.
Yeah.
Right. So now the final category here, this is the special one. Now, that's probably the whiskey you'd save to commemorate a special occasion. So for me, it's not necessarily one that I've tried, but it's one I've always wanted to have.
Right. Yep.
Right. So, and it's one that I'd definitely probably buy if I'm celebrating something special. Right.
I already can tell where this is going.
Yeah. It's the Oban 18.
Yep. Yep.
Right. So
knew it.
So for me, yeah, exactly. I haven't tried it, but it's definitely something I'd keep and I'd uncork when I'm celebrating something huge.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So what do you have here?
So, kind of done a similar thing to you. I've chosen an older version of a whiskey that I selected before. My one would be the Talisker 30-year-old. So
Okay.
This one is not cheap. I think it comes in at about $700. But if I was celebrating a special occasion, like a really special occasion, it's one that I would go out and put money down for. It'd probably be the first whiskey I'd choose to spend a decent amount of money on because, as I said, I have thoroughly enjoyed a Talisker 10. And to go a higher age statement of the Talisker, I just think like that'd just be a treat in and of itself for me. And I would celebrate my occasion of being able to afford to buy a Talisker 30 by drinking the Talisker 30.
No, yeah, definitely, yeah. And for me, that's probably the same thing as well. If I bought that Oban 18, I'd be celebrating the
purchase of the Oban 18.
Celebrating the purchase of the Oban 18 itself. And I think that's worthy enough to uncork it.
The special bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so I think if anything, I kind of showed that I had too many options. I couldn't narrow it down to one.
Yeah.
Because whiskey, Scotch, it's so complex. It is entirely dependent on who you are and what you like, as well as what you know other people like. Like, I couldn't have a shelf packed full of peated whiskies because that's not going to be a fun experience for people that I wanted to try a different range of tastings with because, you know, what if one person doesn't like smoke or what if they try it and don't like it? And then, like, you're left with nothing else to offer them. But also, you kind of narrowing yourself down and missing out on a lot of
backing yourself into a corner.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, and it also could just be that you just can't follow the rules. That's why you'd pick 5 and you couldn't pick 5.
Yeah.
So that's probably
I'm sorry,
that's probably
I
just what
ruined
it
your
is.
segment.
That's probably just what it is. Let's be real here. That's probably just what it is.
Yeah, coming off that, like, we'd love to know what you guys would put down as your 5 bottles. Please email us at dramtalk.au@gmail.com. If you are able to narrow it down to 5, like, more power to you, and we would love to hear about it.
Yeah, or if, like Daniel, you have like 20, just, you know, send the email anyway.
Yeah, I have a problem with authority. You can't tell me what to do.
Right, so heading into our next whiskey that we have here today, that's the Tomatin Cu Bocan. Right, so Daniel, do you want to go into this one for us today?
Okay, so Cu Bocan is one of the special releases from Tomatin, which is, as we mentioned earlier, a Highland distillery. It's on the eastern side of the Highlands, so it's pretty close to Speyside.
Okay, right.
And now Cu Bocan is Tomatin's peated malt. So
yeah, a little bit of an experiment for them there, right?
Yeah, they're trying something new. I mean, like, as we have mentioned in previous episodes, Islay are known for their peated whiskies, and a lot of the mainland distilleries are experimenting with peat and releasing special editions that feature peated versions of their main lines. So Cu Bocan is from Tomatin, and now for anyone familiar with a lot of the, I guess, English-Scottish folklore, some may know the Tale of the Hound of the Baskervilles, which is featured in Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. And the Cu Bocan is a Scottish version of that tale. There is a similar legend surrounding the peat moorlands, which encompass the village of Tomatin. And the story goes that late one night, it was a very foggy, misty night, as most nights are in Scotland.
Yeah, so every other night?
Basically, yeah.
Okay, all right, cool.
One of the workers from the distillery was walking the fields, and he caught a glimpse of this kind of giant spectral being in the shape of a hound. Now, I mean, he was coming from the distillery, so how much of his vision was aided by the product of Tomatin?
Yeah, it's probably just that.
Yeah, basically.
Or this is just Pokemon now at this point.
Or in the Kanto region.
Yeah.
So what happened was he reached out his hand to touch this dog because he wasn't inspired by fear when he saw it. He was curious and reached out to touch it. And as he reached out, the beast evaporated into smoke in the air in front of him.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought you were going to say it asked him to catch them all. And I'm like, okay, this is Pokemon.
Yes. So that's kind of, I guess, the legend both behind Cu Bocan, the Scottish spectral hound that roams the peat moorlands. And that's led to Tomatin's decision to name its peated whiskey after that.
Okay,
Because
yeah.
as we've read in the notes, it's not heavily peated. The peat kind of is floating around and sits there, and it gives you almost like a misty sense as opposed to like a heavily smoky sense.
Right, yeah. And just to give like some insight as well, we've tasted this before. We have tried it. And just stuff like my recollection on that previous experience is that, yeah, the peat or the smoke was really faint. It didn't really envelop the whiskey, and I don't think you'd want that anyway in a Highland whiskey or even in a Speyside whiskey, which I think Tomatin, like on my palate anyway, they lean more towards Speyside, even though they call themselves a Highland distillery. They lean a bit more towards the Speyside, and I think that's probably just something that it's a really like just contentious, right? Like your Speyside, your Highlands, I think it just really, whichever you want to put on your label, that's the one you're going to put on, right?
Yeah, we have spoken about how whiskies within a really close proximity can taste so different from one another, but they can also taste pretty similar or characterized by similar notes. And I know Tomatin is really close to the whiskey trail, so we'd see similar notes. However, in saying that, when we first opened this bottle, when I first got it, the immediate thing that hit me, even just like pulling the cork off the bottle for the very first time, was it's a very strong citrus, very strong orange.
Yeah, really strong citrus. I recall that. And like saying there's like look, those floral notes. And those are just all things you'd find in a Speyside whiskey generally anyway.
Yeah, interesting in this review because we're comparing it with Oban, which also is characterized by both a, I guess, somewhat peated, not peated, Oban's not peated, but...
It's not peated, but I think it's more, it's got a little bit of the coarseness and roughness that you'd find in the islands and the isles, but it's also containing all the notes of the region it's in itself, which is the Highlands.
Yeah. So we experienced some citrus in Oban, where we noted citrus in Cu Bocan, and Cu Bocan's peated, so taking on a lot of the themes of the common peated whiskies, and Oban's, it's got a very familial connection with some of the island whiskies, so it'd just be interesting to see how these two drams compare to each other.
Yeah, definitely. So, in saying that, let's get into Cu Bocan.
Slanger?
Yes.
Too far away to cheers. Yeah. I'll cheers the bottle.
So I think on the nose for me, definitely the citrus notes are still there. Very similar to the same time when we first tasted the bottle. Maybe not as strong, but it's still, I can still draw back to that. So off the official tasting notes here, they're saying that you initially hit with coconuts and cream.
Interesting.
Not happening for me at all.
I haven't heard that. I haven't tasted that in my previous notes.
Yeah, so this that coconuts and cream, not there at all for me. They're saying there'll be some botanic notes, which I can see the botanic notes. I can see some small floral notes here and there. In terms of the smoke on the nose so far, not even present.
No, I think what I'm getting on the nose is maybe that almost like salty, citrusy sting that you get from a very like tangy orange.
Right.
Peel.
Yeah.
And that can be, I guess, like closely associated with salt, which is common amongst the whiskies of the Isles, but yeah, definitely no peat or smoke.
Yeah, nothing at all.
But just in reference to, I guess, how bottles change over time, as we mentioned earlier, when we first opened this bottle, it was just like smelling, orange zest. Yeah. Straight up.
And even like orange zest, I don't know if I can remember like more lime for me.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's just
it's like it's all part it's all just part of that family anyway.
Yeah, and then when we poured it into the glass, it was so different. Like the orange had, or the citrus had vastly diminished in comparison to a lot of the floral notes that started to come up. And I mean, like the bottle is about half empty now, but I've only had it for about a month.
Yeah, I think that says more about us than the bottle.
Probably, yeah. But even just like to compare the notes that I'm getting directly from the bottle, it's a lot sweeter. I'm almost getting like no citrus and more vanilla coming from it. Do you want to?
Yeah, I was going to just pass that here.
We've resorted to drinking straight from the bottle case.
Yeah, bottle, vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different nose.
And that's insane, like just... I guess the amount of oxygen that's now able to sit in the bottle because we've drunk a decent amount, but even just, the time it's been open, it's crazy how drastically it's changed. And then it's almost like the reverse because now when I smell it from the glass, I'm picking up the citrus that I can't tell from the bottle.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's really interesting now is we've had it sit out for a little longer. A little bit of smoke is actually coming onto the nose for me now. Like I can see like the faint the faint like whisperings of smoke.
Right. I think it's getting me in the sense that, menthol sense as
Right,
well. It's like
yeah.
hitting the back of the nose. I'm not smelling smoke exactly. It's very subtle, but it's still there.
Yeah. All right, so onto the taste now. So for me, on the taste, it's not characterized by like an oily feel, or it's not really viscous or anything. It's really light. But the smoke is, on the initial taste, the smoke comes at the front for me.
Right.
And then it slowly dissipates and leaves like a mist crawling over a hill, you could say.
Okay, yeah. That's a very apt simile. I get smoke that I say it's in the middle
Okay.
of my mouth. It's not exactly at the back of my tongue or at the back of my throat. It's at the top of my tongue.
Okay.
And it's very similar. It's floating above everything and just like wafting around, exactly like you said, like mist over the hills. That's the perfect way to describe it. And I think if that's what they were going for in the Cu Bocan, they've done a good job of it.
Yeah.
However, if you're a fan of peated whiskies, this does let you down in
Yeah.
the peat.
If you're a fan of peat or you're a fan of smoke, I wouldn't come to this bottle, to be honest. I think the people interested in this bottle are the people interested in the experiment,
Yep.
as opposed to coming here for a smoky dram.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I've been really interested in is, non-Islay distilleries that are experimenting with peat, because it's always interesting to see how...
Yeah, I think that's what we're both, diverging to at this point in time anyway. It's because we've been so stuck in Islay and the islands, and now we want to see how the other distilleries start to use peat and implement that into their actual core range.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that's because we're getting turned away from Islay. If anything, branching out and experimenting and picking up a lot of these notes has improved our ability to identify the flavors beyond the smoke and
definitely.
the peat in Islay whiskies. Going off what you mentioned before, coconut, it'd be a bit of a stretch to say I'm picking up coconut.
That's a huge stretch.
But I am getting that creaminess, like the sweet cream. Like
Okay.
the sweetness of like a thickened cream. But I mean, like it's possible the coconut's there. It's just very hard for me to pull that flavor out.
Like for me, I'm getting a bit more of like a cinnamon. And
All right, yep. I can see that.
yeah, it's like a bit more of a cinnamon than if anything now. But on the tasting notes, they're saying, imagine a cafe latte with fresh chocolates to shavings. No, just no. I don't see that. And then again, I think that does hark back to Daniel and myself both. We still are struggling to draw a chocolate note from whiskey itself. So I think that'll just come with a bit more time for us anyway in general.
Yeah, and that's also going to be a hard one for me because I only drink black coffee, so I don't know a cafe latte. But yeah, so the Cu Bocan, bottled at 46%. It was matured in bourbon, Oloroso sherry, and Northern American virgin oak casks.
Okay.
I think if we were to attribute a lot of the different flavors, I think definitely the cinnamon that you're picking up, probably a contribution of the sherry cask.
Yes.
Bourbon could contribute to the sweetness.
Yeah,
mainly the
bourbon,
vanilla.
like traditionally, would attribute to like that vanilla
Yeah.
kind of taste that you're getting and picking up in whiskey.
And it does carry a little bit of that bite that you get from, I guess, like fresh virgin oak.
Yeah.
So it's that raw woodiness to it, but that kind of sits very low on the range of what you experience from this one.
Yeah, it's not. This dram is very middle of the road for me so far.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different flavors and things that could appeal to a variety of people. Just not appealing to me, though.
Yeah. So I think we'll go ahead. We'll add about a teaspoon of water now, see what happens.
Yep, that sounds good.
So with the addition of that water, on the nose for me, I'm getting a lot more of a licorice. The citrus is still present, but it's not as strong. And it blends a little more with that licorice note I'm picking up.
Right, okay. Like what else is in the scent?
So on the nose, on the official tasting notes, it has rich almond as well as aniseed. Aniseed's probably it's like a licorice tasting seed.
Oh, okay, wow.
So yeah, I
think
think that is like a note that I am actually getting on the nose there. I think it'll just be interesting to see how it actually affects the taste now.
Yeah.
I think with that water, I get a bit more of the cinnamon notes and like a bit more of the spices.
Yep.
A lot of the sweetness has gone, and the smoke, it's like it never was there for me.
Right, yeah. I'm definitely not getting that same kind of mist rolling over the hills, smoke floating around the mouth anymore. I think it's definitely affected the smoke expression in this. And I agree. I think the spices do come out a lot more. It's not so sweet.
Yeah, so I think with the Cu Bocan here, I'd say water does a lot more harm than good.
I would agree with you there that the water does not improve the experience of this one.
Yeah, it more heightens the notes and flavors of spice that you'd pick up, but the way that it mutes everything else is a little bit disappointing and off-putting, I think, for me.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because there was so much more interesting flavors present in the dram itself prior to the addition of water. And then just seeing how everything's completely been muted, but the spice notes, that's pretty disappointing for me. So I think with that, we'll probably get into the ratings now.
What are we looking at, Brad? What's our 1 to 10 scale?
All right, so 1 is we've pretty much binned it. It's not worth our time. 2 is we wouldn't really consume it by choice.
Right.
Right, you know, I'm at your place. You've got nothing else on the shelf. I'm not going to say no.
Like me when I come to yours and try Oban 14.
All right, enough of that, mate. All right. So 3 is multiple flaws. So there's still some good, but nothing amazing, right?
So maybe I can bump Oban 14 up to a 3.
4 is average. There's other drams you'd rather have, right?
Mm-hmm.
5 is good. It's just fine. 6 is very good, a cut above. 7 is great, well above average. 8 is excellent, quite exceptional. 9 is incredible, an all-time favorite. And 10 is perfect. So, Daniel, Oban 14, where does that sit for you?
I think I made my position on that very clearly.
Like, I'm just asking again, because if you're going to stick with 3, we're going to have to find a new host.
Okay, so Oban 14. It definitely ticks a lot of the boxes. I think it is very reminiscent of a maritime dram, picking up a lot of those sea salty notes as well as the citrus. They both flavors that very much appeal to me. So it is one that I could always have on my shelves.
All right, come on, keep going.
I'm keeping you in suspense here. So I would say I'd have to rate it an 8. Okay, I think
Good. I was going to say, if it's below a 7,
for the sake of keeping this podcast up, going after a handful of episodes, I will say an 8.
Okay, good. It's good to hear. So,
what about you, Brad?
For me, I don't think it could come as a surprise. If anything, like just in this episode, how I've like just gushed over Oban anyway. For me, it's a 9.
Shocker.
Yeah, no, Oban's an all-time favorite.
Yep.
And for all the reasons we've gone over in this episode. And I mean, just the fact that in my 5 bottles of whiskey, I could have 5 bottles of Oban and I would not be disappointed at all. So I think...
This message is brought to you by Oban.
Yeah, I wish. But yeah, I think Oban's just... It's always going to be a favorite for me. And I think it's always going to be something that I'll have in my shelf. It's always something I'm going to bring out. Whether I have people that are new to Scotch, new to whiskey, or people that are experienced with Scotch and whiskey. So it's always something that I think, and everyone will always find, I guess, pleasure in drinking Oban. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just, perfect. No, it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but 9. It's incredible. Yep. It's incredible.
Okay. And what about the Cu Bocan? Where would you place that?
Okay, so Cu Bocan for me, that addition of water just really was a disappointing note to end on. And I think I really emphasized that. I think I said that like 2 or 3 times. So Cu Bocan for me is a 5. It's good. It's just fine.
Yep.
Like I'm there. I'm all there for the experiment. And I think in a way it pays off.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I wouldn't say it's average because it's above average, definitely. But yeah, it's just good.
Yep.
You know, I wouldn't run out and buy a bottle of Cu Bocan. I don't think I would, to be honest. And I think that 5 is so evident in the fact that I'm struggling to find words as to how much I either enjoyed it or was disappointed with it. So I think it just sits exactly there, like in that middle.
I would agree. If anything, I would probably maybe rate it a 5.5. I think a lot of its faults aren't due to the whiskey itself. I think it's more due to my personal preferences and for what I was after in a peated whiskey. I would say, it does sit in the range of the 5s, because for similar people who are after a peated whiskey, I think you're going to be maybe disappointed if you're after a very smoky version of Tomatin. And so, for me, it's that low. Again, I don't regret buying the bottle.
No, like I wouldn't say like it's a regret. It's more that like we mentioned before, like we're all there for the experiment, and that's exactly what we want to see. We want to see distilleries be a bit adventurous, try something different. And with that, like, sure. And at the end of the day, 5's not really a bad rating. It's good.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a pass.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't regret buying the bottle, but I probably wouldn't purchase it again. There would be other ones I'd rather try. And they might go for a lot of other whiskeys. So just to reiterate, this is not a criticism of Tomatin or the Cu Bocan, because as we were saying,
it's just our ratings as well. So
our personal preferences, we're entitled to them.
Yeah, so if you want to challenge what we're rating, or if maybe you've had different experiences with these two whiskeys here, just reach out.
Yep.
You know, the email's the same,
Yeah.
dramtalk.au@gmail.com, or jump onto Instagram at dramtalkpodcast.
Yeah, so it'd be great to know your thoughts if you've tried both of these drams. They're both very interesting drams, and we'd love to know what you think.
So that's been Dram Talk for today, ladies and gentlemen. Next week, we'll be looking at Ardbeg. So back on Isla. So stay tuned.
I'm both very excited and dreading that, because that means that I will be finishing my bottle of Ardbeg Ugadal.
Yeah, so if anything, join in for Dram Talk's first casualty.
Yeah, if the second half of that episode is just filled up by uncontrollable sobbing on my part, that's why. Please stick through it, because I'm sure we'll offer some valuable point or two.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm Brad, as always.
And I'm Daniel.
Thanks for listening. Pour another dram!